through the lot, now you know I'm coming through. When the growth look good on you, best believe they wanna screw now. I've been trying to climb, devil threw me in the dark. Baby, don't be insecure, you can still go make a mark like blow. Could never let them drain my soul now. Blow. Tables turning like doorknobs, wow. Blow. I think I'm about to set sail. I'm a walking, living legend, walking with my chest out. Life keeps dealing me cards, I keep feeling it.
Boom, 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 boom. What's going on, people? What's going on? We're back in the damn building. Make sure you guys are smashing the like. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you're sharing this out. So we're here. We're back again. Another Scout Watch. Yes, we are getting tired of these, but guess what? I'm not. I am not. I'm enjoying these throughout the summer. Obviously, Liverpool are linked with every man and his dog. So to be honest with you, you know, it's making for good content for myself. I hope obviously you guys are enjoying it. The ones who are, make sure you're smashing that like, and if you're brand new, make sure you're hitting that subscribe button. So today we're here to look at Cheick Doucoure, Crystal Palace midfielder. Yes, another name that has been added to the list amongst all of the other players. Do you know what I mean? I mean, if I could get a picture of all the bloody players, I think I actually typed it up on Google, and I was looking to see, you know, players linked, well, midfielders linked with Liverpool, and I think about 60 odd names had come up, and that's just the ones that was only up. That article was done recently, so God knows the number it would be now. You know, we've had debate ones, you know, Kefren Turan, Kone, Gravenberch, Gabri Viega. Those are the more recent ones. Obviously, Yusuf Fofana, João Palhinha, Ugarte, Caicedo, Declan Rice at one point. You know, we've been linked with so many different midfielders. And one thing I would say is, obviously, it's all reports, it's all news until something concrete actually comes in. Heck, who knows? By the time this video comes out, for all I know, Liverpool have signed Cheick Doucoure. Do you know what I mean? So I'm not going to sit here and act like it's not necessarily true, but at the same time, it's reports, guys. Let's just take it with a pinch of salt. Ultimately, it's good to have a look at these players anyway, because, you know, it's good to, you know, get a bit deeper in terms of trying to figure out if these players actually fit what Liverpool are, you know, trying to, you know, ultimately do. Because, you know, if they don't necessarily fit what we're trying to do, then, you know, we're not exactly going to be sitting there super happy that, you know, we're signing these type of players and, you know, all of these kind of various different things. So like I say, man, it is good to kind of, you know, take a look. But as I mentioned, obviously today is Doucoure. Would you guys like us to sign him? Crystal Palace, I think the reported fee might be in the region of about, I'd probably say between 30 and 40 million, potentially a little bit more than that. So it would be interesting, really and truly, to see if, you know, Crystal Palace would let him go, you know, for that kind of fee. Obviously was playing in France for Lens. We've seen what Lens have done, you know, this season just gone, you know, finishing second, 1 point behind PSG. Fantastic performance that they've obviously put in. He's come from there, playing in the middle alongside Seko Fofana. You know, Fofana's actually spoken very highly of Doucoure, you know, when I was doing the reports and just taking a little look. He spoke very highly of him, you know, mentioned that he's a player who kind of works in the shadows. And that is one thing I will say. You know, I'm not going to sit here and lie and say to you guys, yeah, this is the guy that I want us to sign and blah, blah, blah. I'm not really going to say that. I think he's a decent player. But what I do want from my defense midfielder, either he plays in the 6 or plays in a double pivot, is, you know, someone who does work in those shadows. You know, I don't need to really notice you. You know, if I'm not noticing you in games and we're still winning games and we're dominating the midfield, but I don't really notice you, you're doing something right. You're doing something right. So, you know, I can't really complain. But obviously, that's obviously Doucoure. Let's take a look at his heat map. Obviously, playing for Crystal Palace, as you can see, as I mentioned, obviously in that midfield area, he is all over the gaff. So again, points to quite positive, you know, in terms of being able to get around the pitch and stuff like that. Big up Jerry as well. Jerry actually did a video speaking on the whole transfer speculation and stuff like that. And you know, he took a little deep dive into, you know, the type of player he is, you know, whether he'd be a good fit. So guys, make sure you head over to his channel to check out his video, you know, just to see, you know, just kind of, again, a second look kind of thing, you know, just to kind of forward your own opinion, you know, on these players as well, you know, because we do, a lot of us, who are not maybe, well, especially the ones who are not content creators, but just ones who are just casual football fans, we might just look at these players, see the names, and think, oh, okay, yeah, well, he's not good, or he's good because he plays for that guy, and that guy plays for this guy. And, if we all went with that kind of logic, really and truly, every single player we've been linked to would be technically be deemed shit because of the clubs that these players are playing for, bar maybe like Gravenberch at Bayern Munich. The rest of them are playing for clubs who are all lower than Liverpool, if I'm being totally honest with you. So we can't ever go with that logic. We've got to see, do these players fit the profile? Do they fit what we're trying to do? Can they work in this midfield? Whatever type of midfield that Klopp is trying to play and implement next season, can they do that? Perfect. If they can't, then we don't need to worry, too much about these kind of players. If we take a look here, it's just a couple stats, defensive stats, obviously. You guys can check this out, of course, Fbref or Fbref, whatever I don't know how it's actually pronounced, but that website, you guys already know what it is. We can see he ranks pretty decent in most of these kind of metrics. Defensively, again, he seems like a player who can cut the passing lanes. He seems like a player who can break up play, very good in possession. In terms of being on the ball and stuff like that, I wouldn't say that that's where his strengths lie, again, defensively. But again, I don't mind that. I really don't care if he's not Modric on the ball when he's dribbling and he's able to bob and weave like Iniesta or, in tight space. I don't care about all of that. Can you be a defensive midfielder? Can you be a six? Can I trust you in a midfield to be able to break up the play when we're in transition and we may lose the ball? And it seems like he is a player, who can, ultimately do that. We see here at the bottom, interceptions, he's ranked to the 97th percentile, 1.82 per game, tackles and interception, 4.32 per game. Tackles, if you look up at the top, tackles, in the defensive third, pretty good. Middle third, obviously, is okay, but again, he's not really in that kind of position, and obviously attacking third, he's never really there, so not too fussed about that. Tackles in a general sense, he's making 2.5 per game. Tackles 1.5 per game. So pretty good reading when you're looking at it from a statistical point of view. Here, just again, and this is what I mentioned before. If you look at the bottom, the ones that have been highlighted, of course, those excellent. They're really, really good for a player of his age, stature, profile, and the team that he's playing for in Crystal Palace at this current moment in time. But also look up further, and this is what I mentioned before. Some people see their like progressive carries. Like, listen, of course, if you can find a defensive midfielder who's green and everything, then I'm not complaining. I'm not gonna sit here and gas it and say, nah, man, that's dead. Of course, I would, I would love to have a person, who's able to do all of those kind of things. But ultimately, at the same time, I am also looking at different types of profiles, different types of players, and obviously, he seems like a player who, in terms of the progressive carries, passes, and things like that, take-ons, touches, attacking area, that's not where his game is, but either way, when we look at his heat map anyway, his game isn't really there. His game is center to, in that defensive kind of third. Yes, he's got some areas in that attacking part, but mostly, behind, the halfway line. So that's kind of where I'm looking, more so at him. And again, interceptions, tackles 1, ball recoveries, really good, 7.15 per game, which is pretty decent. To actually have, especially when you're playing in a Liverpool midfield, we're going to definitely 100% need something like that, So again, makes for good reading when we're looking at it from a statistical, point of view. Obviously, taking a look here, this is obviously just the formations and stuff that he's played in, for Palace, playing here alongside Lukonga, who's on loan from Arsenal in that 4-2-3-1 system. So again, double pivot. Don't mind that at all. And again, in the 4-3-3 system, here he would be the deepest midfielder, so he probably would be playing in that lone 6 role, especially if he's alongside people like Eze and Schlupp, two players who are a bit more attacking 8s, especially in that kind of formation that they would have had out. So he would definitely play, as a lone 6. So again, it's that versatility as well, being able to play in those positions. We know Klopp, as I keep saying, we know Klopp likes a versatile individual. He likes players who are able to fill in a couple more roles within the team. But as much as he does like those kind of players, he also does like specialists. There are players in the team who only play one role and one role only. So again, all interesting to see. If we take a look, obviously, at his actual style of play. So here, Doucoure is a rangy player. His long strides help him burst out of pressure, whilst his excellent anticipation stops him from diving into challenges. Instead, he pokes the ball away and bounds up the field, much like an Abu Diaby used to do. Now, if Liverpool were to get a player like that, Yeah, now we're talking. Abid Diaby, one of the uh, off the top of my head, I couldn't. If I can't remember all the names of all the players who have, their careers have just kind of gone down the drain because of injury. But he's one of the top ones that I'm thinking about, especially in the Premier League. Fantastic player. Like, he was just so blighted by injuries, but you could see it. Heck, this guy would come back for Liverpool game, and I can always remember. I think it was they were wearing a black and purple kit. Was it the black and purple kit? I feel like he's played against us in that kit before that Arsenal have had. It was a striped one, pretty decent kit. Um, but I think it was that kit. If not, then maybe it was maybe I'm thinking of a blue one. But whatever. I just remember a game that he played against us and completely bossed it. Like, he made whoever we had in the midfield that day, and I can't even remember whoever we had in the midfield. They were just babies to him. Doesn't matter. Heck, even if it was Gerrard in there, Gerrard had nothing, absolutely nothing on Diaby that day. He absolutely ran the show, and you could see as well that he is a player at that time. If Arsenal could have kept him fit, Arsenal would have been a little bit of a problem, especially with the other players that they had around, the Nasris, the Van Persies, the Songs, and the Klebs and stuff like that. They had a nice little team, but he just could not stay injury free. I did feel sorry for him. So if we're saying that, or if they're saying that, Doucoure can be of similar kind of build, someone who's able to get up and down the pitch like a box-to-box midfielder, but also defensively sound, but comfortable in possession when he does get into those attacking areas. That's pretty decent, man. It's pretty decent. You know what I mean? I can't scream too much about that. The young player from Mali also shows great intelligence and quick thinking on the ball, as well as impressive awareness and vision. His concentration and defensive awareness to proactively disrupt the opposition and retain possession in a simple but highly effective manner. Now, this one I found pretty interesting. Doucoure, as I mentioned before, has box-to-box coverage and mixes dribbles in among his passes almost everywhere he goes. He uses shorter passes near the left flank and is more adventurous as he floats towards more central areas. So that could be something that we need, especially if we're playing with this double pivot, this kind of new box formation where Fabinho is on that left-hand side. Knowing that he's able to comfortably play in those areas, again, really, really good. Overall, his profile bears a strong resemblance to another midfielder who broke out in Ligue 1 at the same time. Guess who it is? I'll give everyone 2 seconds to kind of guess. Who do you think at that period of time when he was in Ligue 1 playing for Lens, who do you think he would be relatively similar to? He plays in the Premier League now. I'll give you a hint. He went on loan last season. Played in Ligue 1 prior to that. Went on loan last season. I'll give you a second to think on it. You're probably going to skip through anyway of the video, but it is none other than Ndombele. Again, another player that I look at and I think to myself, not because of the injuries, so to speak, with him. I mean, he's had his injuries, to be fair. So let me not say it's not just that, but I don't know. I feel like he's not really been given too much of a chance because he is a baller. Like, he is genuinely a baller. I just think he maybe just needs to apply himself a bit more. But again, under the old regime, when he was at Tottenham 2 seasons ago, before he went out on loan last season, maybe it just wasn't right for him. Maybe it just wasn't right. And obviously you guys can see on the screen the type of stats and stuff like that. Again, in your own time, take a read of that. Take a look at that. Ground rules in possession, ground rules out of possession. Him and Ndombele pretty similar, and Ndombele is even better in some other metrics. Attacking output obviously is going to be a lot better. But again, the fact that he's being talked about in the same breath as some of these other players, then I am looking at it and I'm thinking to myself, I mean, for Palace he was okay. I felt like in that midfield, it's funny because as the description kind of tells you here, he wasn't really someone I really noticed. Do you get what I mean? So maybe again, that's on me. Do you know what I mean? For not really, checking out someone like him in terms of, what he can and can't do and stuff like that. I mean, he won the Palace Player of the Season, for the season just gone. So clearly, for someone I didn't even notice, for him to then win that, when I would have immediately have just said, obviously stupidly, I would have mentioned an attacking player like Eze or something like that, Elise, more so Eze. So Eze might have run him close, but at the same time, the sheer fact that the team have gone for him as the Player of the Season, You know, it does bode well in that kind of sense, you know what I mean? Because they clearly recognize the things he can do, you know, the things he does do, you know, that no one's actually noticing, that unless you're really studying this type of player, or unless this is a player that's on your like player radar, your player watchers, you're not going to notice him in these kind of games. And obviously we saw towards the back end of the season for Crystal Palace how good they, you know, they inevitably were. So, you know, again, I got to pick him up. You know what I mean? I can't say, you know, I can't say too much more, you know, in regards to that. Just a little bit more on his style of play. The concentration he has evidently put in on the training ground not only reflects Doucoure's finishing, but also in his defensive work. Though an energetic player, he is not rash, and his ability to marshal other players off the ball will prove invaluable in the Premier League. And lastly, the role played by the 22, I think it's 23 now, 22-year-old does not naturally lend itself to being noticed, a midfielder primarily tasked with breaking up play and distributing the ball to the more technically minded forwards. And I think this, in terms of the style of play, really epitomizes the type of player, you know, that he actually is. You know, as I mentioned before, and as people have mentioned about him, someone who works in the shadows. Seko Fofana said the same thing. Other people, you know, have watched him a lot more extensively than I have. You know, they mentioned the same thing. And, you know, when you look at statistics and stuff like that, you know, he does rank pretty decent. You know, he does rank pretty decent. I'm not saying he's the best, because he's far from being one of the better names that we've been linked with. There are better players I think we have been linked with than Doucoure. But for the price and for what he can give you, maybe it might be a shout. Maybe it might be a shout. Obviously, he's trying to replace this guy, which is Fabinho. We look here, and I looked at the stats obviously prior, and obviously watching Jerry's show as well. Yeah, they made for good reading. Obviously, we see here ground jewels. The ground jewels, success and stuff like that. Obviously, Doucoure comes out on top in that kind of regards. Clearances, interceptions, but you know, again, Liverpool might not be making that many. So context. This one was funny because it was all based around like the passing and forward passing and in opponents' half and stuff like that. You know, in the Premier League. I mean, long pass accuracy pretty close, if we're being totally honest with you. Pass accuracy, again, not too far off, 83% to, you know, Fabinho's 88%. So it's not too crazy. Passes completed, you know, passes even attempted per 90 minutes, 40 to 61 of Fabinho. Again, Liverpool have got the ball a lot more, you know, than a Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace are not that possession-based type of team. So these kind of statistics, again, they're just more, you got to take these into context, you know, but again, you know, tackles made, take-ons completed, take-on success rate, you know, 73% to the 63%, you know, fouls conceded less, aerial duels contested and won, you know, it's, like I said, it did make for good reading, you know, when you're looking at someone, you know, like Doucoure, you know, to kind of figure out whether or not he could potentially play in this team. Again, like I mentioned before, I'm not going to sit here and lie. I'm not going to sit here and say, you know, I feel that he is a player that, you know, potentially could, maybe he could work in this midfield. I'm not going to sit here and say he couldn't. Do you know what I mean? Again, he's not an upgrade on Fabinho. I wouldn't go that far. And I don't know realistically what people are actually expecting and what they want from the next, you know, 6 that comes in. Everybody saying, "Oh, I'll just go out and get Lavia." Is Lavia what Liverpool realistically want? You know, in that kind of regards. Obviously, I know we've had that interest, but is he the guy that we want right now? I don't feel like it is. I feel like we want him, but we don't want to use him right now. We want to use him at a later date kind of thing. But obviously, we need to just sign him, you know, as soon as possible. And hence the reason why we haven't really triggered it and just kind of gone in yet. Otherwise, I felt like we would have gone in time ago. Not to say that we still won't, but I just felt like we would have gone in for him a little while ago. Are we looking at a different type of defensive midfielder? Everyone keeps throwing up so many different names because Ugarte is nothing like a Lavia. They're two completely different players. Do you know what I mean? So when everyone was screaming out Ugarte, was that really the right choice? Is that the type of the midfielder that we are potentially looking for? If not, then maybe Klopp want a bit more of a ball-playing, deep-line playmaker, Rodri type of midfielder. You know, someone who can break up play, cut out that passing lane, but super comfortable in possession, can bring the ball out, can play, you know, with the attackers, you know, and the attack-minded players because he can play in tight spaces. He's good at keeping the ball, you know, yeah, like keeping possession and all that kind of stuff. Is that what we're looking for? Again, I don't really even know. I honestly don't know. But, you know, we'll wait and see. Maybe Doucoure will be the answer. Maybe Doucoure will be the guy, you know, that Liverpool should get and will get. But we'll wait and see. Let me know what you guys obviously think in the comment section. Would you want us to sign Doucoure? If not, throw out some different names of different players you think Liverpool should be signing. That's today's player scout watch, should I say, done and dusted. Cheick Doucoure, and we are out, man. Make sure you leave a like when you guys leave this video.